All right, welcome in everybody. Today we are going to talk about theming. I hope that you have something to take notes with because as I said a moment ago, we're going to go over quite a bit of information. So make sure that you have your notes ready. A few housekeeping things before we jump in. Our next meeting will be towards the end of the month in October. And then after that, after our October meeting, we are done until February of 2026 when we pick up teacher training again. That gives me a holiday break, you a holiday break, and as quiet as kept, that is a good time to get homework done. So, because you don't have to worry about coming into another meeting or getting more information. So, use that time to get homework done if you haven't started it already. I'm still available for questions during that time. Obviously, you can DM, text me, email, all that kind of good stuff. But we just won't have any new live classes during that time until we get to February. So there is that. Before I get going, do we have any questions this morning regarding homework or when things due or anything like that? You guys feel pretty good about it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Y'all know that if there's something that you think of after the fact, you can always reach out to me and I'm happy to um, get it over to you. So give me just a second. I gotta get somebody in the meeting. All right. Okay, so it looks like we all got our notes. I got one more coming in. Give it just a second. So, just so y'all know, going forward, what I'm going to do with our monthly meetings and during the cohort when I start those next season, I will give time during our classes, during our live sessions for homework. My hope is that this will encourage you to actually get that shit done. Because I feel like when we get off, everybody's like super excited. It was fun. We talked about all the things, and then we get off and life gets in the way. So then stuff doesn't get done as much as it otherwise would. So I'm going to build some time in, some group work time, some work on your own time during the session so that you can get homework done. And that way it will hopefully promote you using that time wisely and actually getting some of the stuff accomplished because you and I both know that it is a daunting task to do this. And because it is a huge, as large an undertaking that it is, sometimes we need a little nudge in the right direction to accomplish what we need to accomplish. But all right, so now that our housekeeping things are out of the way, let's talk about theming in class. So, how to theme a yoga class. We're going to explore themes of yoga classes and sequencing that is important, but theming is what transforms a series of poses into a meaningful experience. So our goal in the abstract is to create these meaningful experiences in classes for students. So the messages and the themes that we're working through stick to people. So this is our opportunity to work on our ability to not only teach asana practice, but to build the skill of storytelling within a class, which is a really fun thing to do, especially if you can master it in a way that authentically works for you. So, a theme is a thread that runs throughout the class. It gives students something to reflect on, embody, and carry off the mat. In this lecture series, we'll cover what makes a strong theme, how to craft and deliver one, common pitfalls to avoid, and then we have a practice exercise that I'm going to leave you with. It's a list of ideal themes that you can use. So I'll send you the link to that towards the end of this session. And if you're watching this as a recording later, I'll make sure that you get emailed this worksheet so you can go over it on your own time as well. So the foundations of theming, there are many sources of class themes that you can use. So let's break down a few of them. There's philosophical themes that you can use, like for instance, teaching from the yamas and niyamas, teaching from the Yoga Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, the chakras. For example, if you're using the yamas, you can use ahimsa and non-harming as a means of a theme. You can also use something like seasonal or elemental themes. So thinking grounding in autumn, renewal in spring, ways to cool off in summer. I know teaching a cooling practice in the summer, especially in Florida, is really nice because it is ridiculously hot around here. For those of you who have cooler summers, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm sure there's somebody out there that lives in an environment that lends itself to that. So this is a time where you can teach a more cooling, grounding practice during that time of year. You can use emotional themes or psychological themes, so self-compassion, courage, resilience. There also can be themes that lend itself to the anatomy of the body. So, be it your physical anatomy of the body, you can talk about the energetic cues within the anatomy of the body. So, think if we're talking about the heart, think of heart opening or ways in which we can move our chest to open the front portion of the body. Hip openers, hip release. How can we strengthen our core and gain more resilience within the body? How can we talk about that from an anatomy perspective? And then how can we talk about that from an energetic perspective? Why is being sturdy within the core of the body so important? So, a strong theme should be relevant to the students' lives. The reason that it being relevant to someone's life makes a difference is that way it resonates and it has an opportunity to connect with the student in what they are living, feeling, what they may be struggling with off the mat. Because the idea of this is to take the things that we learn off the mat and reinforce them, excuse me, take the things that we learn on the mat and reinforce them into our daily lives off the mat, right? We want to take these practices with us. So if we're learning to breathe in these interesting shapes, can we then learn to breathe when someone cuts us off in traffic or somebody is rude and in an encounter in the store or something to that effect. So making sure it's relevant to your students is what bridges the ancient teachings of yoga into our modern realities. It allows us to connect, like, how is it that this thing that is 5,000 plus years old, how is it relevant to our daily experience? Without that bridge, it can be profoundly hard to find yourself within the yoga philosophy. Because if I just tell you, do no harm, but the world is literally on fire, and I'm talking to you about how it's important that you don't bring harm to other people, and kindness is the key, and you're over here like look, don't tell me that, tell the outside world, right? I'm just trying to live and exist in my own space as well. So there has to be some relevance to where we bridge what the teaching is saying to applying it to our everyday life, so it doesn't feel abstract and disconnected. So ways that we can make things relevant. So contextualizing ancient wisdom is a really important way to do that. We just talked about that in terms of ahimsa. Instead of simply saying using ahimsa is non-harming, relate it to something that students might be experiencing. So we can relate it to if you feel pressure of a work deadline, if you feel pressure of maybe a school deadline for younger folks that are coming into class, or college age students that are coming into class. Ahimsa can mean pausing and before reacting, before engaging in some sort of self-sabotage, self-harm that will not lend itself to what you need for your person, that could be harmful to you, or it's going to adversely impact the person that is in this experience with you. Giving yourself rest when you feel depleted, that's another way of non-harming. Learning that no is a complete sentence, that's another way of non-harming. It requires no pre or post amble. You can just say no and move on. And that's another way of non-harming. So it's not just, in community and in person and being nice to one another. It includes bringing kindness to ourselves as well. This makes yoga philosophy not just theoretical, it just brings it to the practical of our everyday life. So we can use that cue in let's say, that 60-minute class that we're providing for students. They can now take that with them Monday morning when they go off to work and go, if somebody, let's say somebody shows up at their desk and is asking them, hey, I need you to do this project, but that project is not your responsibility, this puts you in a better position to go, hey, I could practice some non-harming to self and say no, right? So it's just allowing the theme itself to have practical relevance to that person's life or to our everyday lives in general and our experiences. Tied into current seasons and cycles. In spring, we can talk about renewal, planting seeds, fresh beginnings, leaning into spring. I like to, even in my clothing, like, excuse me, I tend to wear brighter colors during that time. My nail colors tend to be brighter, but they happen to be bright
Mhm.
right now. I'm
Mhm.
holding on to the last vestiges of spring and summer, is if you cannot tell by my nail polish. But wearing brighter colors to bring that bright energy into the space goes a long way to sharing a theme with purpose for your students. Um, and then the words and things that you use as well go into creating this theme, this overall energetic feeling within class. In fall, you can talk about grounding and letting go and preparing for rest. In the fall, I like to, or one of the things that you can do with your students is incorporate an activity of writing a letter to yourself in the fall that you open in the spring of the following year. And it's a nice gauge of where you are, where you were then versus where you are now. And it allows you to do some introspection that so yeah, that self study to get to know you a little bit better by writing this letter to self. It's something that you give students on at the end of class on the way out the door. They don't have to share it with anybody, but planting the seed of the idea is a nice thing to do around the holidays. Talk a lot about slowing down and reconnecting to gratitude. This is a really good one for the holidays because I feel like that time of year, especially for those of us who have large families and large family obligations, it gets really fast and really chaotic. I know when my kids were younger, it felt like we were moving at 9,000 miles an hour. As quiet as kept, it is part of the reason that I don't teach in November and December because I have kids and it's crazy. So there was always an activity during then. There was always a PTA, a something, some dance, some something that we had to be at from about October 1st on. So I needed to incorporate this opportunity to ground and slow things down in my business. So this is why we take that time off. So I'm giving you the idea as students and as teachers, give this opportunity to your students. Maybe you teach a slower flow. It can still be a power flow, but have a slower cadence. Um, Also provide them with the idea of reconnecting with gratitude because especially during the holiday time it can feel overwhelming to people to think and encounter things that run into situations or things that they feel like they don't have or that they're missing out on. So this is an opportunity to focus on the things that are working well for them that they do have and reconnect back to gratitude as a whole. So students immediately connect because they are already experiencing these cycles outside of class. So these are easy ones to do. You don't have to grasp at grounding them in so much context because we're all kind of living life in this way, in this seasonal pattern, even though seasons may be different for everyone. Even though seasons may be different for everyone, and what they're going through specifically is going to be different from one person to the next, but the general overall arching theme stands and gives an opportunity to connect with folks. You can also acknowledge collective realities. This is something that y'all know that I am heavy on without making without. Um, dismissing what is going on for people, excuse me, let me rephrase. If we are outwardly dismissing what is going on for people, I feel like we are being disingenuous when it comes to teaching. So y'all know that the political climate is up, down, left, right. There are some folks that are like, don't talk about politics, don't talk about whatever. But I do not think that we, in this class, in this community, I do not think that we have the luxury of doing that, because the things that transpire adversely affect our daily lives, or have the potential to adversely affect our daily lives. So we don't have the luxury of sticking our head in the stand and just saying, oh, everyone in the world is one, and everything is good and great, and I'm just here to meditate and breathe. I wish, in a perfect world, we would have that luxury, but um, in a direct aside, being Black in America doesn't work that way. So, take from that what you will. So those things inform the way in which we practice. They inform the way in which we show up in the world. So if something happens, y'all know this to be true. There's the world that exists over here. Then there's things that happen that are culturally relevant to Black folks. And we all kind of tend to talk about them. We all kind of pop in and say, did you see, or do you know about this thing? So if I showed up to class and we didn't have that conversation, that would be weird. That would be weird. So for me personally, I do not avoid having the conversation in class, because I know that those things weigh heavy on the community. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up. There's no way that we can have a genuine conversation regarding breathing out trauma, or working through trauma, or healing trauma, or whatever the heck key phrase you want to call it these days, without being honest about the things that are going on, and how they affect us. So during times of stress, economic uncertainty, and social tension, we can talk about finding steadiness through our practice and reconnecting to our breath, but not as a means of avoiding the things that are transpiring. Um, one of the one of the things that happens here, because I am in Florida, is after a hurricane or after a storm, there is this collective, like, we are all tired, but we're all grateful to be in community with each other. So that's another thing that we can talk about, right? We went through this traumatic experience. We had to evacuate. There was one hurricane season where we had two hurricanes like within a week of each other, and we evacuated twice. It was very crazy. So that theme, that overall kind of community experience that happened to everyone in this area, we talked about it, right? We brought that into class. So that collective awareness, acknowledging the collective realities that are going on, are a great way to anchor the experiences that people are having within the yoga practice, so they can get that much more out of the class that is being taught. So this shows students that yoga is not a separate thing in their life. You're not showing up to your yoga class to escape your life. You're showing up to your yoga class to integrate the things that yoga teaches us into our lives. That's what we're going for. I know that there is spiritual bypassing that happens, where folks are like, I'm just here for the vibes. Okay, well, that is great. That is great. But on the other side of that, what do your vibes look like when, you're stressed about paying your light bill? So let's try and integrate these things to put you in a better place to manage some of the ups and downs that life can bring. You can also draw from universal human experiences, be it stress, rest, grief, joy, belonging. These are things that are universal. Everyone has an experience with one of the things that I just named. An example of this is a theme of santosha. So contentment could be linked to something as simple as being grateful for the breath in this moment. Now, that does not mean, santosha is not telling you that you have to be content with the situation. The situation can absolutely be trash. It could, and you could give your full wholeheartedly, fully agree that the situation that you're in, it ain't all that hot. But there is an opportunity to find contentment with your inhale and exhale from one moment to the next, right? So please do not take it as, oh, I have to be happy with, the fact that I could be facing a layoff, or I have to be happy with the fact that I have this strained relationship with my mother, or I'm trying to think of something else that I recently heard this week. I have to be happy with the state that the country is in, and pretend like America is not that girl that is super mean to me, but I keep going back to try and be her friend. I don't have to be happy with any of those things. I can be fully aware, but breathe through them from one moment to the next and make the best of that moment and that breath and the next one thereafter. Does that make sense to everybody? So your themes give you an opportunity to integrate the realities that we're living in into your class without um, without being, what is the word about, without letting yourself down and betraying yourself in terms of trying to say that things don't hurt when they actually do. So by tapping into the human condition, you make your class accessible to all backgrounds and belief systems. it it is not a hard and fast that you make it accessible to all. You give the opportunity for it to be accessible to all, right? You give the opportunity for this to happen because you as a teacher are just there to facilitate the experience. The person that is on the mat is the one that is doing the work, right? You're kind of, I think of it in terms of you are lighting the way, you're just holding up the torch, right? It's up to them to find the path. But you're here to hold up the torch to say, hey, we know that life is hard. We know that things are heavy. We know that things can be difficult. But let me help light the way and give you some tools that you can put in your toolbox that may, help you later on down the road. Also, when it comes to this being relevant, it's important to use student-centered language instead of lofty concepts like transcending ego. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? What does that mean? And in the context of Blackness, transcending ego probably means something quite different than it does for other cultures. Because last time I checked, our egos fuel and are necessary for a whole host of different things just to keep you whole in this experience. Does that make sense to y'all? Like you need that. You need to be about that life. Because if you're not going to make it. You need to have a thick skin because this shit's hard, bro. So pretending that I'm not going to take that with me or that confidence that um, that is necessary just to make it from one moment to the next, we can't play that game. It's not safe to play that game. Um, so so this idea of you're going to transcend your ego, you're so much in your ego because you're worried about your race related things. I don't have the luxury not to. So if we're going to have the conversation, if we're going to have the conversation about transcending ego, if we're going to have a genuine conversation about transcending ego a from a place of genuineness, we need to talk about it from both sides. It can't just be like, oh, we're going to transcend and everybody's going to be loved, because that's not how that's going to go. That's not how that's going to go. All right. So, in addition, by using student-centered language, it meets the student where they are rather than assuming they have prior knowledge of yogic terms. And though you may have heard some transcending ego and being bigger than the I and all of these things, we're still in these human bodies, living in these human experiences and trying to figure this stuff out. So I don't necessarily feel rather that the use of lofty language serves the greater good. It's not about you showing off that, oh, I know all these things and, let me show you how cool I am. That's not what it's here for. Then the other reason why this matters is practical cues. For teachers before, asking yourself, does this theme apply to the life of someone who walked into my class? Like, does this theme that I'm bringing to my students make sense for their experience? Is it relevant? Because if it's not, then we need to make some sort of adjustment. What would make the theme feel like it is a gift for the students to take with them and not just something they'll hear and forget, or not just you being talky at them where they're like, where they're in class and they've done their 10th chaturanga, let's say, and in their mind they're going, I wish this lady would shut up because I need some space to breathe. So what portion of your themes can you make sure you package in a way in which your students can take it with them and apply it to their life and their experience? What would so what would theming look like if we were taking the lesson off the mat? Is a thing that we overall want to make sure the question that we're answering when it comes to the relevance, like why it's important. Can they take this with them? Is this a gem that they can use in their everyday life? Is this a gem that they may understand later on, right? Because sometimes we'll deliver a message and folks aren't ready to hear it, but the light bulb goes on, comes on later on. All good things, all good things. So next we'll talk about why it is important to be consistent without being forced. So the consistency matter surrounding your theming is it's one of the more powerful things that you could do because it bookends or threads the entire experience of your class. It's not just mentioning it at the start and then forgetting it and not kind of tying a bow on the experience at the end before you get to Shavasana or even during Shavasana. Students should feel as though the theme is woven throughout the class and it is connected to their breathing and their movement. So it gives them an opportunity to reflect on what you did at the end of class. So consistency gives class cohesion and makes the themes more memorable. But if a teacher overuses the theme or repeats it unnaturally in ways that you feel like they're trying to just harp on something, it's what I like to call what I like to think of rather of you're teaching in a lesson that's not necessarily authentic to your personality. Maybe it is somebody else's class or something you heard the thing, but you haven't integrated it and embodied it, and now you're just telling somebody else. That feels unnatural. It comes off as heavy-handed, and it can be distracting from the class overall, and it can also feel performative. And nobody wants to be in a performance in a yoga class. That's not what you're there for. There is a time and a place and a space for that. It's just not with you in the front of the room as a yoga teacher. So that's where the balance in this lies, that presents consistency and present without that forced repetition, giving students the space to breathe and take the lesson in. So ways to keep things consistent: you can bookend the class. So you open with an introduction of the theme that's simple, student-centered language is used, and close with a return to the theme. I also like for myself rather to close class the same way whenever I teach. There's a closing statement that I make at the end of all classes all asana classes that I teach. And it's just a good bookend. And it also lets people know from a time perspective, oh, we're at the end. And even that, just knowing that, okay, we're at the end, can be a means of stress relief and connection with your community. So this creates a natural arc, and students start with awareness of practice, with embodiment, and then they finish with the integration as they're in Shavasana. So it cohesively connects your class together. So remember how we talk about an asana practice where we pick our apex posture and everything builds to that point. And then once you do your apex posture, you're coming back down the mountain to get them towards Shavasana. You want to do the same thing. It's building with this base level of the theme that you're talking about. It's building to this crescendo, and then we come back down the mountain and ground it into the practice with our words as we bring our students to Shavasana. So creating that arc. In creating that arc, we want to create that consistency and continue it through the practice. We want to create touch points during transitions. So sprinkle in the theme during natural pauses. So if you're entering into child's pose, if they are entering active rest in downward dog or preparing for Shavasana, these are times that you can weave those touch points in transition to make a callback or reminder to the theme. So an example of this is if the theme is letting go, you might say something at the start. Start with each exhale, allow yourself to release tension. Then maybe mid-class, you could say something like, choose a variation that lets you soften instead of gripping. So we're talking about letting go. And then at the end of class, let go into the support of the ground beneath you, because we're asking the person to relax into shavasana and not hold so tightly. I like to use the knowing that your work is all done, allow the floor to support you. These are all just using your words to once again create that theme and that arc. So this keeps the theme alive, but it doesn't overwhelm the students with that constant reminder. It gives them space to breathe in between. So use multiple expressions of the same theme. The reason that this is important is everybody learns and hears in different ways. So rephrase so it doesn't feel repetitive. Balance, steady breath, finding your center, grounding through your feet, equanimity. These are things that all mean the same thing, that are all talking about balance without me saying the word balance over and over and over again. Compassion is another one. So another word we can use, but that's also softness, releasing self-judgment, being kind in your choices, honoring where you are today. Honoring where you are today is one of my favorites, all right? Especially for us who are recovering type A's, like myself, who want to chase postures. You know, there's a posture, I got to do it. If I don't catch this bind today, I feel some way about myself. If I don't do the thing, I'm in my feelings, all right? So releasing to maybe my body isn't interested in this day, and that's okay. That's okay, right? Maybe this is the fullest expression of this posture in this moment, and I personally am going to love on myself in this moment, and whatever the posture happens to look like, and not beat myself up about it. All right. So sometimes we stick reminders in as teachers, and they're equally as much for us as they are for our students. I love that. I love that for us, right? Being authentic in who you are, it is very important. Um, by varying language, the themes feels fresh with still staying consistent as well. So align asana, pranayama, and meditation with your theme. So consistency comes not just in words, but in the design as well. So if the theme is grounding, make sure the postures that you choose are grounding, and maybe you're holding those postures a little bit longer. Whereas if we're talking about spring and renewal and energy, maybe we're moving through and creating that breath of fire, and in order to build up that agni, to get that fire going within your body, right? What are your feet doing? Are you more grounded, or are you more elevated? And are we lifting up, and are we doing bold standing postures or inversions? Make sure whatever you're doing, the postures that you're asking students to do, match with the theme of the class. If the theme is expansion, heart openers, expansive breath work is a good one to do. Opening visualizations of meditation helps. In heart openers, though, I also make sure that I give anatomy cues in this, because the heart opening thing can be a hard brain to body connection for folks. There might be some resilience about the front of the bodies, or some resistance from an energetic level about the front of the body being so open and exposed. So I like to talk through the anatomy parts of that too, if I'm doing a heart opening themed class, just to kind of balance it out a little bit, right? We want to make sure we're giving students an opportunity to engage in the practice from all perspectives and kind of meet them where they are, because everyone has their different feelings and connections surrounding energetic cues. So the way to theme is felt through the body and not necessarily heard through your words. So if the body is having a hard time connecting with the posture, I don't give a damn what you're saying in the front of the room. That person is not connected to what's going on. Their mental chatter has just kicked up about what they can and can't do, and how this hurts, and why do they keep coming to this class. That might just be what my mental chatter sounds like. However, I can attest to the fact that if your noise is loud when you're moving through postures, then chances are it's loud for your students too. So those words help bring them back into the body. Reminding them to breathe helps bring them back into the body and reconnects with the reason that they got on the mat in the first place. Remembering that less is more. You don't have to overtalk, and you don't have to go for these deeply philosophical moments every single time. Sometimes one well placed reminder takes care of everything that you need, as opposed to repeating the phrase over and over and over again. There are moments where you can repeat something over, and it does helpful, but let silence be your guide. Let silence be as much of a teacher as you are when you're standing in front of your students. Because think of it, we're asking you to breathe, to move, to not fall over, to balance, to make weird shapes, all at the same time. Like, they're gonna need space to take in the information. So let's talk about some of the pitfalls and forcing of theming. If theming is not your jam, if you have not gotten to a place where you kind of figure this out for yourself, don't force it. Don't force it. All right. Over intellectualizing, turning the class into a lecture instead of embodying the experience. Because remember, if you're in an asana class, they're there for the experience as well. They're not just there for to have you talk at them, right? They're there to move their bodies and breathe and give themselves an opportunity for introspection. Um, Repetition without depth, so saying the same sentence 10 times without adding new context, that doesn't necessarily help either. Then inauthentic connections, forcing a theme onto a sequence that doesn't match. Making sure that the theme not only is authentic to you, but it makes sense for the postures that you're asking students to do. When themes feel natural and spacious, students leave class feeling inspired. When themes feel forced, students may leave feeling disconnected or distracted. I know for me, I struggle with this. If the teacher has a voice that I have a hard time with, that I can't hear it well, or the sound of it I'm instantly pulled out of class. I struggle. So sometimes that connection for me is about, do I connect with this person on an energetic level and their sound and I know this may be a corny way to say it, but the vibration that they hold, can I connect with them in that way so I can then receive class? Because if I'm in my head about what it sounds like, none of it's going to go anywhere, and that is hard. So this is why I want to give you that natural and spacious feel is what we're going for. This is why it's very, very important to make sure that the theme is authentic to you. All right. So let's talk next about, that leads us to authenticity and theming and why it's important. Students feel energy more than words, full stop. Like, if you're not feeling it, they know that you're not feeling it. Saying. So make sure that you are in it for the right reasons, and that you're showing up with a sense of community and connection, and wanting to teach and wanting to share with the students that are in front of you. You can memorize a script or repeat a quote, but if it doesn't resonate with you personally, the students are going to know. They're not going to feel that it's authentic. They're going to feel your same disconnection from that thing. I am not a like shine your heart through kind of yoga teacher. That's not my personality. So when I teach from that, so y'all saw I just did this thing, the energetic eye roll of saying something like that, because that is not authentic to me as a person. And as soon as I did it, I felt my entire body like roll its eyes collectively about that phrase, because it's not me. But for somebody else that does teach from that perspective, if that is that thing, it feels so good to be in a space with them when they teach that way, because it's authentic to who they are. Uh, so as you can tell, this is why authenticity really does matter. When you share something you truly believe in or practice yourself, it carries more weight, and students trust what feels genuine. If you haven't been on your mat in a while, but you're teaching, students can feel that. They can feel the disconnect in your practice, and the vibe that you give out as a teacher. That is why it's important to work towards keeping your practice when you can. I know as well as anybody that life gets hectic and sometimes we don't make it on our mat as teachers, but do your level best to keep connection with your practice, and always be a student. So your voice is the channel for the theme. So every teacher has a unique way of speaking, cueing, and sharing their stories. If you use someone else's words and tone of philosophy and you don't fully embody it, it's going to sound like you're putting on a show. It's going to sound performative. If that's not your jam, don't teach from that place because folks will know. And it just feels like there's a massive disconnect when you use your own voice. Students experience your humanity and your wisdom, not a performance. This is why, and I know I've said this to you all before, but it bears repeating. This is why I say use your own speaking voice. If you don't have a yoga bunny voice, if you're not a soft and light, if you're not very demure, very mindful when you speak, don't teach that way because that's not who you are. Just be yourself. Whatever your speaking voice sounds like, bring that to the mat, right? Don't change it because it's very weird to be in a class with somebody and they've taught you and they sound one way, then they get out in the lobby and they're all like, oh my God, blah, 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 and they sound completely different. It's strange. It is very strange. So bring your full self to the party. It's okay. Then it builds connection and trust. Students come to yoga not just for postures, but to feel supported and to feel seen. When you share a theme that comes from your lived experience, students sense that in your vulnerability and your honesty. This creates a deeper trust, and students are more open to the practice and more likely to return. It keeps you inspired as a teacher as well, because now you don't feel like you have to get up there and put on the yoga show every time you show up to teach. You can just be yourself and bring your authenticity to the mat and to your experience. Being authentic also prevents appropriation. If it's not yours, don't use it. If that's not your shit, don't use it. If you are going to share something, give credit to where it comes from. Full stop. Like that's what you should do. That's what you should do. Authenticity creates longevity in teaching as well. So trends in yoga come and go, right? Buzzwords, phrases. Is this an Instagram worthy class? I mean, 20 years from now, Instagram may not be the thing, right? So if you're teaching authentically from yourself, it doesn't matter what the passing trend is. You're still going to be you, whether it's now or later. Authentic theming means your teaching style grows with you and it does not grow from external pressure. This is why I'm very particular about when it comes to how I show up on social media. So could I make a bunch of like yoga dance videos and lip sync to songs and do all that stuff? Yeah, I can, and it's fun and I enjoy it, but that's not authentic to me. I usually don't necessarily share that part with me, that part of me rather, when it comes to the social media experience. So I don't want to create this inauthentic bubble around myself when it comes to teaching if that's not something that I can hold up all the time, right? I'm a relatively stoic person and I know that about self. I have my fair share of fun, but that would be inauthentic for me to show up lip syncing to songs and doing that. It happens on occasion, y'all. So letting pieces of your personality be shared is one thing, but doing it because I just want to get likes and views, it doesn't work. And the other reason that being inauthentic in that way doesn't work is you can't keep up with that, right? If it's not who you are, if you don't find it fun, if you don't find it as a means of connection with people, there's going to come a day where you're like, I'm tired of, to use an old phrase, I'm tired of shucking and jiving just to get these people to like, comment, share. So I can't keep this up anymore. And then all of a sudden you have a following that's like, well, where did the dance girl go? But you were never that to begin with. So just be yourself. It makes it a whole lot easier all the way around. All right. So some practical examples. Inauthentic, a teacher picks a theme of gratitude because it's Thanksgiving, but they rush through the script and they don't connect with it. Thanksgiving and gratitude may not go together in the way in which everybody feels like it should. So if you're picking a theme of gratitude, make sure it makes sense for you. Make sure you feel gratitude that day, because if you don't, it's going to show in that theme. Authentic would be they they share something. This week I've been working on noticing small moments of gratitude. Here's an example of a small moment I noticed this week, and then you teach the rest of the class from there. The bottom line with authenticity is it equals alignment. It equals being energetically aligned with who you are as a person and then delivering that to your students. That's what we're trying to do, right? That's ultimately what we're trying to do. So we talked about choosing our theme. We talked about creating a message, then aligning our sequence to that message, scripting the touch points to weave and bring it back together, and weaving that theme throughout class, whether it be verbal weaving, embodied weaving, so using our breath, or energetic weaving. Think about the music that you're going to use as well, your props, your lighting, all of those things help create the energy that exists within your class. We talked about pitfalls to avoid overloading students, because this can create disconnect. Too much philosophy turns into a lecture, and it disconnects the students from their breath in their asana practice. The disconnect that can happen when picking a theme that does not match your sequence, it doesn't feel good in the body when the words and things don't match. Forcing, repeating the theme so much that it just feels contrived and forced. Inauthenticity, using themes that don't feel true to you. And then lack of closure. Make sure that you ground the class. Like, make sure you tie a nice bow on it at the end when folks are in Shavasana, or as you close your class altogether, so people feel like it is done, right? I have done the yoga thing in my 60 minutes. Integration of practice. So now let's put it all together, picking a theme you actually will use in class. Um, you can begin to write out your opening statement, like 2 to 3 sentences or so, giving 2 cues to weave the asana together, and then a closing reflection um, is what you can offer when it comes to theming and putting your class together. I'll go over that again. So, picking a theme that you'd actually use in class, an opening statement, like 2 to 3 sentences, 2 cues that weave the theme and your asana practice together, your postures together, and then closing with a reflection for Shavasana. Um, so when you create your theme, remember, it's not about adding fluff. It is about creating a meaningful experience that is meaningful to you, that you then can authentically share with your students as they move through their practice. Keeping it simple, keeping it authentic, and keeping it connected to your students is how you create a great theme. So, as promised, let me give you your worksheet that you can go over. And within this worksheet, there are yoga themes that you can use, and then you can write in your notes on the side. There are 10. Yeah, there are 10 theme ideas that are on this. You can use this for your own notes. You do not have to turn this in to me. But I wanted to make sure that you had this for reference. So that way it can make this task of theming a little bit easier if it kind of feels like it's still a bit esoteric for you. All right, so I put the worksheet in the